Welcome back to the PFF NFL show. Trevor, Sikkema, and Dalton Wasserman here with you guys to recap and give you the grades for all of the games that we saw in Wild Card Weekend at the NFL. Dalton, how you doing, my friend?
Good. I think it was a fun wild card round, right? I think we had some true contenders really separate themselves, which happens this time of year, as it should. You go out and prove it on the field, and obviously we saw a lot of dominant performances, as you should, from the league's best teams. Then we had a really fun one last night for, well, most of us. But either way, that turned out to be the best game of the weekend. I thought there was a chance that it could be, or we still have tonight's game, too, to go. But I think that's what you get in this first round, is the league's elite teams separated themselves from just the good ones.
You know, I really just can't believe the committee put some of these teams in, you know? It's just absolutely ridiculous that they're keeping the Cincinnati Bengals out, and, you know, they put some of these other teams in just because, you know, they won a couple of extra games.
See, in the NFL,
shame on the committee for
this.
In
the NFL, though, they call them scriptwriters, not the committee.
They do. That's a good call. That's a good call.
It's different at each level, you know.
Obviously, there were 5 games that we have seen so far through Wild Card Weekend. We got one more coming up. We'll give you the recap to that one tomorrow. We won't reveal the script. Obviously, we have the script for the game, but we want to make sure that you guys can watch it live. So we won't talk about that one yet. We'll talk about it tomorrow. I'm kidding. Everybody calm down. I feel like PFF analytics, maybe people would actually believe us that we have the script for the NFL, but we don't. We are going to talk about these 5 games, though. We're going to give you the top 5 graded players for every single game and every single team, and really just talk about what happened. You know, we're going to get into the most impressive, the most disappointing, the stat that told the story, and really have some, you know, for the teams that obviously won, you're talking about what they can take into next week. To the teams that lost, it's like, all right, cool, you got into the postseason. What do we need to do moving forward? And I think that's a good way to start here. We'll start with the first game. It is the Los Angeles Chargers versus the Houston Texans. Texans were hosting this one. Chargers make the playoffs their first year with Jim Harbaugh, which I think in and of itself was an accomplishment. And we'll get into the conversation about the Chargers. Unfortunately, not a great showing from Los Angeles here in this first game. Score of this one, 32-12. The home team was victorious. But if you're a Texans fan, you have to love how that looked. The top 5 graded players for the Houston Texans in their playoff win, cornerback Derek Stingley Jr. up at the top of the list. What a year he is having, 93.6 overall grade. And then you love to see his running mate on the other side, Kamari Lassiter, on this list as well at number 2 with an 89.5. Wide receiver Nico Collins, as he always is, in the top 5 here at number 3 at an 88.5. Edge rusher Will Anderson Jr. at 86.9. Defensive tackle Foley Fudukasi with a 79.0. And then quarterback C.J. Stroud in this game struggled himself, but hey, a win is a win is a win. 58.4 was Stroud's overall grade. On Los Angeles' side of things, safety Tony Jefferson at the very top of the list. Big secondary game here with this one. 94.9. Safety Alohi Gilman at 91.6. Wide receiver Ladd McConkey with a 91.6. What an incredible day to cap off an incredible rookie season from Ladd McConkey. There's a lot of building blocks there in that Chargers offense with him being there with Justin Herbert. He comes in at number 3. Number 4, Thierry Tart with a 79.6, and then cornerback Tarheeb Still, another rookie who really stood out this year, who played well in this game, 75.6. Justin Herbert, a 60.3. What was your stat that told the story, Dalton, as we get into this one?
So there's 2 reasons to me that this game went the way it did for the Chargers. One, when they had opportunities to really step on the Texans in the first half, they were up 6-0. Could have been a lot worse for the Texans. They weren't playing well for most of the first half, but the Chargers just couldn't finish drive, couldn't put points on the board with those opportunities, especially when you're on the road. You have to put a team away early. If they still have a pulse when they're at home and they get the momentum going, it's a problem. I think, longer-term aspect of this, okay, and my stat is this. The Chargers had 261 total yards. Ladd McConkey had 197 of them.
Yeah.
And the more, and going back and look, we're gonna dig into Justin Herbert because I got something on that too. This team, and we've seen it several times this year, they just need more weapons, right? I think the more I watch Herbert, A, under pressure from Anderson and Danielle Hunter all day long. B, nobody else getting open. Nobody other than Ladd. Nobody getting open on the outside. You saw Stingley and Lassiter there at corner for the Texans as their 2 highest graded players. They just need more. I come out of this game, and even watching the all-22 of this game, and I look at, you know, even a team with their needs in the offseason, and I go, oh, running back, receiver, tight end. It's all 3. They just need all of it to be better. And I know Quentin Johnston had the big week last week against the Raiders, but that was the Raiders. Now you go up against a primetime secondary with these types of corners, and he didn't have a catch in this game. Ladd McConkey, 9 catches, 197 yards. The rest of the team had 5 catches for 45 and a 38.7 receiving grade. Will Dissly with 2 massive drops, one that should have been a 3rd down conversion. Yeah. The other turned into a Derek Stingley interception. Just the entire operation outside of McConkey was not there. They also only ran for 50 yards on the day. And in a close game, in a game that was 13-6 into the third quarter, I don't think it's that they didn't try. I think it's just that they don't have enough speed. They don't have enough juice at running back. I like Dobbins and Edwards, but they get you your 4, maybe 5 yards, and then they roll on to the next play. There's not a whole lot of explosive element to their running game. I just think they have to continue to support Justin Herbert with weapons. And you mentioned some of those rookies. Fantastic rookie class this year, right? McConkey, Joe Alt on the defensive side with Still and Cam Hart and Junior Colson playing a little bit this year. I think Jim Harbaugh did a spectacular job this year building this team and getting them to where they are. Now they need more weapons. So, I think there's going to be some talks about free agents. I think one of those top 2 tight ends in the draft would be a perfect fit for them, either one. They just need more. They need more than McConkey. We saw it several times this year. When they struggled to score, it was Ladd McConkey, and it was really nobody else producing. That's what happened in this game.
Yeah. Somebody in the chat already asking, hey, how is C.J. Stroud's grade lower than Justin Herbert's? Because Justin Herbert had the 3 interceptions. C.J. Stroud only had 1 in this game. It's because C.J. Stroud actually had 4 turnover-worthy plays in this game, and Justin Herbert had the 3 that he paid for that obviously became those interceptions. But C.J. Stroud did not have a good game himself. He put the ball in harm's way. He just didn't pay for it. The defense wasn't able to capitalize on all those things. So just wanted to shout that out for the people who are watching the show and getting in on the chat. I know that was going to be a big question when we revealed those grades there. So, when I was talking about, hey, Ladd McConkey, he's a part of that foundation that they get to build moving forward. I really think it's just the offensive line that they have building, Ladd McConkey, Justin Herbert, and we will get into Justin Herbert in a second, but that's a really good building block. But you're right about it. They need a tight end. They need a dominant tight end presence. They need another receiver that they could go to. Quentin Johnson had a little bit of a spurt there at the end of the season where I was like, all right, well, hey, Quentin Johnson's actually playing some decent ball. And now we get into the playoffs when it really matters most, and he has a terrible showing. And you cannot have that. Even if you liked what you saw from Quentin Johnson during the last month of the season, if you will, the floor has to be so much higher than what it is right now for Quentin Johnson, because it feels as though, yeah, he's capable of having good games, but he's also capable of completely disappearing from your offense and being a total non-factor. You cannot have that with a wide receiver too, not in this league. It has to be a lot higher than that. So I do agree with you in that regard. To me, a stat that told the story, going to that offensive line that I think is going to be a foundation of how the Chargers are good moving forward. Holy cow, they struggled. I mean, you got to tip your hat to Will Anderson Jr. and Danielle Hunter and those guys. They're fantastic. They get paid a lot of money. They were high draft picks for good reason. They're really good football players. But you look at this offensive line performance from the Chargers. Rashawn Slater is the only offensive lineman on this team with a pass blocking grade above 56. Everybody else was below a 56. 3 sacks allowed, 18 pressures allowed, bottom 4 day all year long. So that includes obviously all the regular season in pass blocking pressure, pass blocking grade overall, and pressure percentage. Like this was truly one of the worst games. And I hate that we have to say this because I wish we would have gotten more of what I think is the true identity of the Los Angeles Chargers in this past game, because it just felt like it was a stinker of a performance everywhere around on the offensive side of the ball. They were not. This was one of the worst days up front that they have had. It was one of the worst days that Quentin Johnston has had. It was one of the worst days that Justin Herbert, if not the worst game that Justin Herbert has had so far this season. And that just kind of sucks. And I think that, again, that stat that told the story there of an offensive line that is budding and getting better and will be a foundational piece of this team moving forward, they were bad. They were bad against the Texans, and I think that was a big point of how we got to where we did when the game was over and the score was what it was. Yeah, it was a tough day all the way around. And again, I think there was a glimmer of hope, but when they didn't score in the first half, when they had a chance maybe to go up 13-0, 20-0, and they could have really put the Texans away by halftime, and then they gave C.J. Stroud a pulse in the last 2-3 minutes of the half. I mean, the play that obviously turned the whole game around was the fumbled snap that he ended up rolling to his right, making a huge play to Xavier Hutchinson. It just feels like, again, it's always that thing when you leave a team in a game and you don't put them away. And the Texans playing 95% of a terrible first half and going into halftime with a 10-6 lead, they had to feel fantastic about that, because the Chargers, they should have jumped on him earlier, but they just couldn't with their inability, like you mentioned, to block. They could not block Will Anderson especially, and their inability of anyone else other than McConkey to make plays.
it just kind of ran out on them. And as I think the one thing we always find out, we talk about in the playoffs, the elite separating from the average or the good, but you also see from the losing teams generally all of their flaws come out, and that's what happened with the Chargers.
Who's your most impressive in this game?
I'm going with a pair of guys. I mean, these two corners the Texans have, well, they're already, with Kamari Lassiter, the way he's playing as a rookie, they're already in the conversation for the best cornerback duo in the league. Stingley might be the best corner in the league, and Lassiter has just been fantastic all season. Stingley, 10 targets, 5 catches, 62 yards allowed, but most of that was to Ladd McConkey, of course. 94.9 coverage grade, 2 interceptions, and a forced fumble that I believe the Chargers ended up recovering. And then Lassiter, 3 targets, no catches, an interception himself, a forced incompletion. I mean, You have to feel like with the Texans, because their defense has a weird feel to it where the middle's a little bit softer, the run defense. But guys like Foley Fadukasi, I think that's a big part on the inside. Somebody stepping up at defensive tackle in run defense where they've struggled all year. And getting Azeez Al-Shire back from the suspension too really helps their run defense. He's a terrific run defender. Obviously went through the controversy in Trevor Lawrence and all that, but he's a valuable piece of their defense. So better in the middle, but if you get in obvious passing situations against the Texans, that's precisely where you don't need to be, because you have Anderson, Hunter off the edges, you have Stingley and Lassiter on the outside, and they are lights out on the outside. If you're gonna attack the Texans defense, you better find the middle of the field. You better get in the slot, because if you try to throw outside the numbers, you're not going to have a whole lot of success on these two guys.
Yeah, I mean, when the career started, with those two guys going back to back with Derek Stingley Jr. and Sauce Gardner at 3 and 4 of the 2022 NFL Draft, Sauce was considered one of, if not the best corner in football through his first 2 years, really struggled this year with the Jets defense as a whole struggling, and it was sort of flipped, right? As the Texans defense was sort of coming together, Derek Stingley Jr. struggled in the first couple of years of his career, and now this year he is playing at an elite level and considered one of the best corners in football. So in the eternal debate of Derek Stingley Jr. versus Sauce Gardner, here we are 3 years into their career, and obviously both of those guys have things to hang their hat on with some really good seasons. So it's great to see. My most impressive, so down the stretch of this game, the second to last drive that the Houston Texans had. All right, so the Chargers score their touchdown, and it would have been a lot different if they actually make the extra point and don't yield the 2 points going the other way for a blocked PAT return for a touchdown. So the score was a little bit wonky because instead of a 10-point game, it was a 13-point game. So the situation wasn't as dire. But at that time, the Chargers go down 3 plays to score a touchdown. 12-25. All right, you have 10 minutes and 33 seconds is when they took over. They salted the crap out of this game. This was an icing the game type of drive. 14 plays from the Houston Texans in that drive. It started with a little C.J. Stroud 5-yard short little pass to the right, and then the next 13 plays of this drive were run plays. Now, Stroud had a couple of them. 11 of them were designed runs from Joe Mixon, and I felt as though Mixon really looked like a younger version of himself this year. Or I should certainly say in this game. He just looked like he had some extra juice, and they leaned on him fully when they needed to control the clock, when they needed to just get out of here with a win. And not only did he do that, not only did he rise to the occasion, he scored a touchdown on this drive. And he was the reason why, because I believe what was the distance of this last run, I believe it was 17 yards. 17-yard touchdown there to cap off that 14-play drive. If he didn't score that 17-yard touchdown, we might be talking about a 17, 18, 19-play drive that was just methodical from this team, and they're very comfortable running the football and putting the ball in Joe Mixon's hands. So to me, that was the most impressive, because when they really needed to eat a ton of clock to make sure that they got out of here with a win, they were absolutely allowed. They absolutely did that and achieved that. So to me, that was the most impressive. Who's your most disappointing in this one?
For me, I'm going to go, because you're getting into the major thing here, I'm going to go with Joey Bosa. And I think it's not just this game necessarily, but the entire season, honestly, and kind of the way the last couple of years have gone with all those injuries and all of that. In this game, a 44.8 overall grade. Did have a sack in the first quarter, showed a little juice as a pass rusher in the first quarter, but 36.8 run defense grade, 13.8% pass rush win rate, which is okay. It's not spectacular. It's not what we're used to seeing from him. And I think it goes back to just, you're going to see the needs of the Chargers throughout this offseason. We talked a lot about the offense, but they're going to need help off the edge too, because Bosa, since he returned from his injury in Week 8, 53.2 overall grade. His pass rush metrics are a lot closer to solid than elite. It just feels like the injuries have taken a toll. 3 straight regular seasons, I should say, with less than 500 snaps played, and there's no way at that level of performance he's coming back. He's got a $36 million cap hit next year. If they cut him, they save about 25 of that. Maybe he comes back on a cheaper contract. Maybe he goes somewhere else as a situational kind of pass rusher. But I think this is very likely the last game that we saw from Joey Bosa, and he's really had a rough stretch the last 2 or 3 years.
My most disappointing is Justin Herbert. And really it's because Herbert had the highest overall PFF grade this season that he had ever had. I mean, he was playing so incredibly well. His 90.2 passing grade was the highest that we have seen from Justin Herbert throughout his career. And really, if you look at essentially Week 7 on, because he started the season, he was banged up, and he just was not the quarterback that we knew that he could be. And then from Week 7 on, I mean, he is elite every single week of the season, especially going into the playoffs. This past game, he had 1 touchdown, 4 interceptions, 0 big-time throws, 3 turnover-worthy plays. This was the first 3 turnover-worthy play game that he had all season. He did not have a single one before this game. This was just one of 4 games all year where he had 0 big-time throws. And certainly if you want to take it from Week 7 on, this is not even close the lowest passing grade that he has had at a 59.8 in a single game. And so to me, the reason why it's just the most disappointing is I'm not saying it's the most disappointing, and I'm not going to get up here and tell you, oh, see, I told you Justin Herbert's bad. He chokes against teams that are above 500. He chokes in the playoffs. Like, I'm not going to sit here and say that. It's just overall really disappointing for a player that had a phenomenal season that this is the way it ends. And it's just he has been nothing like this since Week 7, and I'm not ready to call him any sort of like a choke artist or anything like that. But it's just, to me, it's just plain disappointing that he played the way that he did.
I think everything you just said is absolutely right. Okay, we can admit that he had a bad game.
His worst game of the season.
His worst game
in the season.
Okay, cool. He has his worst game of the season against a really good team on the road in the playoffs. Can we not have an existential fucking crisis over Justin Herbert? And like all I've heard the last 2 days is, oh, well, he can't win big games. Hey, he's trash. Look at him. Like, is he even the Chargers court? The guy has 1 bad game. And then I hear people go back to, oh, remember that big lead they blew against the Jags? Does he play defense? Justin Herbert plays safety? Does he blow 27-0 leads? Like, I don't.
He should have.
He was fantastic. I would argue, because you have the big 4 quarterbacks, right, that we talk about: Allen, Burrow, Mahomes, Lamar, right? Yeah. As like those are the big 4.
Yep.
I would argue. I think it's an easy argument that Justin Herbert was 5th this year behind those
yes.
If it's no less
100%.
than top 8, you couldn't argue him out of the top 8. But I'm just like, why are we especially for a team that was ahead of the curve and likely wasn't really supposed to make the playoffs at all this year? How you could see this Chargers season as anything other than overwhelmingly positive?
I agree with you.
Because what do you want Jim Harbaugh to come in and do? Change the culture, because they're the Chargers, right? The Chargers going to charge or whatever. And Justin Herbert has a great season. Mm-hmm. That's what we wanted to see, Jim Harbaugh and Justin Herbert. So it didn't work in this one game, but it worked in the other 17. We have no reason, absolutely no reason to panic about, can Justin Herbert win big games? Can he do this or that, like you just mentioned? They got a lot of this team left to build. Mm-hmm. There's still a lot of flaws on this team. I still need help at running back, receiver, tight end, edge, and corner. And we're complaining about a team that won 10, 11 games, and Justin Herbert had his best season maybe since his rookie year.
Yep. In
his first year under a new coach. Do we not remember what the Chargers were under the last regime?
I know.
I'm with you. That's the part that's irritating me. I will sit here and say he had his worst game of the season. Absolutely didn't play well. Cool. These things happen. Any question about him being like, they could absolutely win a Super Bowl with Justin Herbert, the way they're building this. Mm-hmm. Why is this even a thought? And I've heard a ton of that the last 2 days, and it's just annoying. What is it like? What do we he's 0-2 in the playoffs. They're the Chargers. They've been 0-2 in the playoffs,
especially before this past year. You mentioned like chargering, right? Like that's the phrase or the word that a lot of people like to use for choking in the playoffs.
And we picked them each to win about 7 games or so. They weren't even supposed to. The amount of ahead of the curve they are, and what Jim Harbaugh has done this year is incredible with Herbert and with the rest of the team.
Yep.
And we got people talking about, oh, you can't win big games. The Texans are really good. Like, especially their defense and all those stars we just mentioned. These things just happen.
Texans had one of their best defensive games of the season, and the Chargers offense had one of their worst. And that's just sort of what it is. And I think Justin Herbert's going to win plenty of big games in the playoffs moving forward, especially with Jim Harbaugh as his head coach.
Yeah.
You get another good wide receiver, 2 in there, good tight end, a running back that can really make things happen. We'll get there, Chargers fans. We will get there. The other game that we had on Saturday, Steelers at Ravens. Ravens take this one 28-14. Top 5 graded Baltimore Ravens here in this game. Center Tyler Linderbaum at the very top of the list with an 86.5. Running back Derrick Henry, 20 yards in this game. He was awesome to watch. 82.6. Tight end Isaiah Likely with a 72.3. Edge rusher Odafe Owe with a 79.6. And then, I think Isaiah Likely is supposed to be an 82.3 to be number 3 on that list. Excuse us. And then tight end Mark Andrews at number 5 with a 77.0. Lamar Jackson, though, the highest graded player on the team with a 92.9. On Pittsburgh side of things, linebacker Elandon Roberts with an 80.9. Wide receiver George Pickens with an 80.8. Center Zach Frazier, 75.0. Defensive tackle Keanu Benton, a 74.5. And then Spencer Anderson, their guard, rounding it out at number 5 with a 73.5. Russell Wilson in this game, not as bad as you might think. 81.4, but obviously it was not enough to get it done. Stat that told the story here, Dalton.
Simple. This game, for as much as Russell Wilson hit a few deep shots, which is the Steelers' offense, it has been that for the second half of the year.
Been trying to tell people the whole time.
This game was over at halftime. That's just what. The Steelers had 2 first downs in the first half of this game.
Yeah. Their offensive philosophy.
There isn't one.
There is. It's run the ball and shot plays. We've talked about this so many times. They are exactly what the Eagles do, but they don't have the Eagles' offensive line. They don't have Saquon Barkley. They don't have A.J. Brown, for as good as George Pickens might be in those situations. And they sure as hell don't have the tight end room and the wide receiver 2 that the Eagles do. You're trying to do what Philadelphia does with a much less roster. And this gap right here, it doesn't work. That's the difference of how we got here.
Which to me also doesn't vibe with how Arthur Smith wants to usually run an offense anyway and what we saw in Atlanta.
That was an interesting wrinkle all season long.
Because Kellen Moore, yeah, that's kind of what he does, right? With Philly, with Dallas, with when he's been with the Chargers. That is kind of what Kellen Moore does. Arthur Smith isn't even that kind of coach, and they became this team anyway. 2 first downs in the first half for obviously the Ravens, the reason of the Ravens holding the ball for over 19 minutes and dominating, but also just couldn't move the football. 49 total yards, 2 first downs, and it's just that simple. If you prevent the deep shots, they got nothing. That's that simple. They didn't even attempt a deep pass in the first half. Russell Wilson's average depth of target in the first half was less than 3 yards. So, I mean, if you're going to go out on the sword at least, and if Wilson throws 4 picks in the first half, I might respect it a little more. They just didn't. There was just no. It felt like, and it's felt like this for a couple weeks already. It just felt like they had nothing left offensively. Second half, Wilson boosted the grade up. I think he made 4 big-time throws or chuck. In the second half, they come out chucking deep balls. I go, why didn't we do this from the beginning? At least you would have maybe gave yourself a chance. I mean, that's all that's been working over the last, 8-9 weeks with Wilson at quarterback, and over the last 5 weeks, it dropped off the cliff, and they've scored 17 or fewer in 5 straight games. You just can't continue to win games when it's just, hey, we throw up jump balls. Okay, what else? Oh, nothing. We punt it. You either throw go balls or you punt it. That's where we're at now, and that's what happened with the Steelers in the first half. Is they didn't get the go balls, which means they were punting it, and the Ravens were rolling them over on offense and holding the football. And when you only get 2 first downs in an entire half, either one, you're gonna lose the game.
Right,
you're gonna lose it handily.
Right. So Derrick Henry, 26 carries, 186 rushing yards, 2 touchdowns, 7.2 yards per carry average. Obviously, an incredible day on the ground for the Ravens. The stat that told the story to me is certainly the Ravens' run game. Them leaning into the run is not a surprise here. The Ravens, it starts with, okay, stop Derrick Henry. And if you can't get past step one, it's going to be a really long day for you because they are very comfortable just giving Derrick Henry the football and winning football games that way. So if you cannot stop Derrick Henry as step one for a defense, the chances of you winning the football game are very slim. The Steelers' run defense, which has been a good unit. They're really good up front, and I think that this has been one of the better run defense units in the NFL. They had, again, kind of like what we talked about with the Chargers, one of their worst days of the season. They had a 55.6 run defense grade with a 0.234 EPA per rush. That's the worst single game EPA per rush that they've given up all season this week against the Ravens. 3 weeks ago when they played the Baltimore Ravens, it was sort of the same story. A 42.9 run defense grade and a 0.011 EPA per rush. That was their worst run defense grade of the entire season. So in the span of a month, you've played the Ravens twice, and it has yielded your worst run defense grade as a team all season long and the worst EPA per rush in a single game all season long. They just haven't been able to stop the Ravens on the ground. And that was the formula. And for that game to play out again the way that it did, no wonder why they didn't win. 9 missed tackles in the run against the Ravens. 5.09 average depth of tackle. They're not tackling Derrick Henry until he's at least halfway to the first down on average every single time he touches the football. Touched the football 26 times. Again, if that's your average and Derrick Henry's touching the ball 26 times, you're not going to beat the Baltimore Ravens. Ravens were able to get their highest rushing grade when they were running outside zone, which I loved. So maybe it was a little bit of getting away from the teeth of that front for the Pittsburgh Steelers and sort of forcing the linebackers, the corners, other people to sort of rally and tackle that way because Ravens earned a 78.2 rushing grade on those outside zone running concepts. So I think that maybe goes into it a little bit. I think they had a really good strategy. And that goes right into my most impressive, and that is just Todd Monken. I mean, Monken's had an unbelievable year as the offensive coordinator there, and I think that's a bigger conversation of we've got all of these head coaching openings around the NFL. I think Todd Monken was talked about as a head coaching candidate. He's had some interviews over the last couple of years. I don't know if he's just not interviewing well. I'm obviously not in the room. But if you go back and look at Todd Monken's resume, top 3 offense in all of college football when he was at Oklahoma State for 2 straight years. He was a Southern Miss before that. I should have said that. He was a Southern Miss. He was Southern Miss's head coach before that. No. I believe it was the other way around. I believe he was the offensive coordinator for Oklahoma State's offense when they were top 3 in the FBS in total points scored for 2 straight years. Then he goes over to Southern Miss, builds a winner there. Gets a job as the offensive coordinator with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers when they had Jameis Winston and Dirk Cutter was the head coach. They were lighting up the scoreboard. Say whatever you want about Jameis Winston and how that Buccaneers team was disappointing on the defensive side of the football. They were never a playoff type of a team. They sure as hell could move the ball on offense, and Todd Monken was a big part of that. Dude wins back-to-back national championships with Stetson Bennett at quarterback when he's at Georgia, and now he's doing his thing for the Baltimore Ravens. Look at Lamar. You can't sit here and say that, Todd Monken's just this Lamar Jackson merchant. What are you talking about? Lamar was an MVP last year. He's only been better this year. And I don't say any of that to take it away from what Lamar has accomplished. I'm giving Lamar all of his flowers, trust me. But for the offensive coordinator to understand how to take a player who's as uniquely gifted as Lamar Jackson, who wins an MVP last year, and help make him better, I don't know. I don't know if he's not interviewing well or what, but I don't know how we are not lining up out the door to get this guy as a head coach. For normally, when you have NFL teams that have head coach openings, they can't figure out a quarterback. Either they have a quarterback there and they're disappointed in the output and the return on investment that they're getting from them, or they don't have one at all. Todd Monken handles either of those situations. So that's sort of just how the Ravens were able to dominate once again, game plan wise, and then going into my most impressive, which is just the year that Todd Monken has had as offensive coordinator.
A couple of things on all of that. One, Derrick Henry. He's had 11 games this year where he's rushed for at least 90 yards. The Ravens have won all 11 of them. They get Henry going and they get the two-dimensional offense going. You're at this point, you're not beating them. That's where we're at. If you like you mentioned, pick your poison. If you're going to stop Henry and take your chances with just Lamar in his arm, go for it. I mean, but you have to take away one or the other. If they both get going, it's over. The game's over almost before it starts. And on Monken, I think to your point, The idea behind splitting with Greg Roman a couple years ago and bringing in Todd Monken was to make Lamar a better drop-back passer. Well, he's a better drop-back passer than ever. And when they can just at any point, it used to be, right, where it had to be play action, it had to be rollouts, it had to be, crafting stuff for Mark Andrews in the passing game. Now it's, we can just drop back and throw the football, and he's going to be great. I think that is a huge credit to Todd Monken. He's been fantastic. And I'll tell you what, you have Lamar, you have Henry. I could pick either one as most impressive any week. I got to get to another guy up front. Got an elite center in Tyler Linderbaum too, and he was just terrific down the middle.
He was excellent.
You mentioned all the outside zone blocking, and I'll just go with this. His overall grade, 86.5, is second best of the season. 89.9 run blocking grade. 13 positively graded run blocks, Trevor.
Whew.
10 of them in that outside zone scheme
there
that
we
you
go.
mentioned.
I
will tell you right now who is the most sick of him after this game and does not want to see him until next October or whatever. His former teammate, Patrick Queen. Boy, it was a mismatch. When Tyler Linderbaum got to the second level on Queen, and you saw it on one of Henry's touchdown runs, it wasn't fair. Linderbaum was all over the place in the run game. Again, this is why we're around, is to give the offensive linemen their credit and try to quantify their value. And Linderbaum, one of the elite centers in football, as he was drafted to be, and he certainly is one of the best pure run blockers at any position in football, and he was dominant between the tackles in this game. First level, second level, outside zone, like you mentioned. Just a great, great football player on the inside. And when you have a center like this, like him, like Creed Humphrey, like Frank Ragnow, it makes it so much easier to run between the tackles. Because especially when you have guys getting to the second level, that's when good runs turn into great runs. And we saw that from Henry, and we know with the acceleration that somehow he still has at 30 years old, when Derrick Henry hits that second level, he's gone. And I think, again, a big credit to that goes to this offensive line and Linderbaum specifically in the middle.
So the most disappointing, I'm just sort of looking at the show sheet here. I think my point's going to go into your point, and we get to have a little bit more of a conversation about the Pittsburgh Steelers because, for most disappointing for the Ravens' outlook, we know what it is. They're setting up for an unbelievable game that's going to be must-watch television of Lamar versus Josh Allen. But the most disappointing in this game, to me, it's a little bit of a trend that has been very concerning. Steelers' first quarter output in this game and all season long. 38.2 defensive grade in the first quarter. 20 and this season overall. So that was just this past game. 38.2 team defensive grade in the first quarter. That means you're coming out the gate slow. You were not ready for whatever the Ravens were going to throw at you very clearly to have that kind of a grade. If you look at their first quarter defense throughout the whole season, 22nd in run defense grade and 26th in coverage grade in the first quarter throughout this season. Mike Tomlin's supposed to be a defensive guy. Mike Tomlin's supposed to be a guy who has people on their P's and Q's, who understands the game of football very, very well, who can come out of the gate with a really good game plan. I'm not trying to say that the Steelers should fire Mike Tomlin, because I do respect him as one of the best coaches for the last decade and a half. But Tomlin's calling card is the defensive side of the football. We're not even talking about Russell Wilson. I'm not talking about Arthur Smith. I'm not talking about the long list of quarterbacks that they have had since Ben Roethlisberger that haven't worked out. I haven't talked about the loyalty to Matt Canada, which was long overdue, about them moving on from him. I'm not even talking about Tomlin's deficiencies on the decisions for the offensive side of the football. I'm talking about his area of expertise, having the team ready, having the game plan ready, coming out of the gate, knowing what's going on, setting the tone on defense. You're 22nd in run defense grade in the first quarter, and you're 26th in coverage grade in the first quarter. This whole season. And in the playoffs, it's a 38.2 first quarter defensive grade. To me, it's just it's hard to not go, has Tomlin kind of hit his ceiling right now for the Steelers? Obviously, is it somebody who has won a Super Bowl for them? He has been successful previously. But what is it, 0-6 in his last playoff games?
5 or 6, yeah.
5. So 0-5
I think since what, 2016?
0-5 or 0-6 in the playoffs over those last stretches. I mean, he's got the above 500 streak, right?
Yeah.
And so we praise Tomlin for what his floor is as a coach.
Rightfully, I think.
And I think so too. And again, I'm not trying to throw more shade or stones than is necessary here. But I am saying that this was not just we faced a Baltimore Ravens team that is better than us. Oh, well, Russell Wilson's not really the quarterback that we think it is. Well, you don't really have the weapons on offense the way that you want to. I'm not even talking about any of that. I'm just talking about the area that is supposed to be his expertise with really good players on that side of the ball. And they're falling very short of what the standard should be. And they did all season long. And it reared its ugly head again this game.
I think the whole thing for me, and it goes together. The Steelers have arguably the best defensive line in football, right? That's the only reason they win games. You mentioned the coverage grade part, the first quarter coverage grade part. That's all 4 quarters. They can't cover. And teams after the first maybe 6-7 weeks figured out if we just get rid of the ball and our quarterback protects himself, they can't cover one-on-one. They just can't. And I mean, they're running Dante Jackson out there and undrafted rookies and other guys.
And Porter Jr. struggled all year.
Porter struggles at the catch point. And they run too much man coverage on top of it, even with very, very suspect corners. So they win games for one reason, and that's because their pass rush is so good that it can disrupt the entire game. But you just can't. I think whether you have Tomlin or not, and they're going to. I think until that streak ends at some point, they're going to have Mike Tomlin as their head coach. Because if he were to get let go right now, the Jets and Jaguars and Raiders should all be lining up at his door.
I agree with you completely. I think that Mike Tomlin in Jacksonville is perfect. I don't think it happens because I do agree with you.
I think it all, and it's tough to say this many years later, but it all stems from just never having a plan when Ben Roethlisberger was declining. Mm-hmm. They're right now, and I'm surprised they're even this high, 18th in offensive grade as a team this year, okay? They have not been in the top 15 since 2018. And we are still looking at a team at that point that was struggling at quarterback and offensive tackle in different areas of this offense. We have no idea who the quarterback's going to be next year.
Nope.
We have 2 solid weapons in Pickens and Freiermuth and a whole bunch of questionable after that, right? Mm-hmm. I feel no better about their offensive tackle situation right now than I did before the season at all.
Chuck Fautanu missed the whole year, so you get him back. In theory, he plays one of the offensive tackles.
So his rookie year is next year. And
yes.
Broderick Jones is struggling, and Dan Moore Jr. is not it. Even if Tomlin stays, there just needs to be a round table in that building about what our entire philosophy of winning is, and it's not the standard is the standard, and we win because we win, and we're the Steelers, and T.J. Watt's great.
It's still my least favorite phrase.
I know it is.
That every coach says. The standard is the standard.
I don't know actually what their philosophy is to winning, other than stay in it and our D-line will get it done. Mm-hmm. That doesn't work. That doesn't work.
Well, before I saw these numbers, I would have told you it was defense as a whole.
Unless you're like Philly as a monster and you have a monster secondary, which you have nowhere near that, and you can score more than 14 points in big games, that's not winning football. I mean, the fact that they patched work together 10 wins in a playoff spot is cool, but this was the most obvious game of the week to me.
Yeah.
They have no shot of winning this game. 0.
Felt like it.
They can't score and they can't cover.
The only thing that they had going for them was familiarity.
Unless their front 4 absolutely dominates a game, they struggle to win. And I think the philosophy of what this team's road to success is, especially offensively for me, they need to have a serious talk about that. Because I'm not sure that they know what it is. They're just patching together plus over 500 seasons just to get here and lose.
All right, we're going to turn the page to the Sunday games. But before we do that, the new year, it's a great time to reevaluate the financial goals, not just for yourself, but also for your kids. Now's the perfect time to make sure your kids are on a path towards a solid financial future. The Kids Investment Account from Fabric by Gerber Life is a quick and simple way to set that up and lets you invest in their future now for education, for big milestones, celebrations, so much more. Fabric by Gerber Life was designed by parents for parents to make it easy to plan for and manage your family's financial path. With a kids investment account from Fabric, you can start investing in your child's future today. The whole thing is online. It's very easy to set up an account. It could take you as little as just 5 minutes. And then you can manage your child's account and monitor their investments right from your phone. Your kids can't invest while they are minors, but a kids investment account basically just allows you to invest on their behalf and gives their investments more time to grow. Funds can be used for anything. When they're a kid, music classes, tutors, summer camps, whatever, all that kinds of good stuff. But then when they're young adults, it could be buying their first car, buying their first house, helping them start a business, helping them start a passion project, whatever it is. Join the thousands of parents who trust Fabric to help protect their family. Start investing in your child's future today at meetfabric.com/PFFNFL. That's meetfabric.com/PFFNFL, MEET fabric.com/PFFNFL. Portfolios are managed by Fort Washington Investment Advisors Incorporated. Additional services provided by Apex Clearing Corporation. All investing is subject to risk. Learn more at meetfabric.com. All right, going back over to the Sunday games. The first game of the Sunday slate that we had was the Denver Broncos traveling to Buffalo to take on the Bills. Bills a dominant win here, 31-7. Let's take a look at the top 5 graded players from the Buffalo Bills that we had in this game. Edge rusher Von Miller. That's right, Dalton, at the very top of the list, an 88.8. Linebacker Matt Milano at an 86.3. Wide receiver Curtis Samuel, an 82.8. Safety DeMar Hamlin, a 77.3, And then wide receiver Khalil Shakir with a 76.8. Josh Allen, the highest graded Buffalo Bill player, at a 90.0. On Denver side of things, offensive tackle Garrett Bowles, a 79.6. Defensive tackle DJ Jones, a 79.4. Defensive tackle Zach Allen with a 77.2. Wide receiver Cortland Sutton, a 77.1. And then edge rusher Nick Benito, a 76.4. Bo Nix in this one. Better than you'd expect. 85.2, although in a losing effort, of course. Stat that told the story here, Dalton. What do we got here from this game?
Well, this game could not have gotten off to a better start for the Broncos, right?
100%. Bo Nix, a little dime to his old pal Troy Franklin. Thought he couldn't throw deep. There it was. Maybe getting Buffalo a little scared. Nah, Buffalo didn't get scared.
Yeah. I'll tell you what, I've probably mentioned this before on this show or elsewhere or wherever, and it's kind of a little bit like the Ravens too. When you go into Buffalo, there's an avalanche waiting for you, and it starts with Josh Allen. I mean, that's really, he was so locked in this game. You go into Buffalo. Look, they're now 9-0 at Highmark Stadium this season. They've scored at least 30 points in 8 of those 9 games. This is why the home field advantage was so big for the Bills, because they just, whatever it is about that building, their offense is just even more supercharged than usual. And we've seen them go and play great offensive games on the road, Detroit, LA, all of that. But when they're in Buffalo and the Bills are playing like this, Josh Allen's playing like this, good luck. I mean, 20 of 26, 272, 2 big-time throws, 85.5 passing grade, 8 carries for 46 yards and 5 first downs, because that's what Josh Allen does. He's just a freak of nature. And I think it really is, as usual, I mean, we've said this 100 times over, is if Josh Allen has time back there to hold the football and do all of the Josh Allen things, he's unstoppable. On throws 2.5 seconds or more, 10 of 13, a $187, 2 big-time throws, a 92 passing grade. It's too much to ask unless you're an elite football team, which I think they have one coming into town next week. And like you mentioned, that's going to be, you would argue that's the game of the week of the 4 of them that we're going to get. You have to be that level of team to go into Buffalo and beat them, because this offense, they're just unstoppable when they're playing at home, and Bills Mafia is going crazy in that stadium, and Allen's got time, and James Cook's got a 100-yard day, and you got weapons like Curtis Samuel stepping up. I saw Dawson Knox make a big catch. Just everything going right for them, as it usually does in that stadium. Credit to the Broncos getting this far. Sean Payton did a fantastic job. Bo Nix had a spectacular rookie season, and on the rare occasion that he had the ball in this game, he was good. There's nothing the Broncos could have done about this.
No, because you're right. You talk about the Bills sort of being an inevitable offense. I mean, when Josh Allen plays the way that he plays, you're not going to stop him. When James Cook runs the ball the way that he does, that to me is actually the telltale sign. If James Cook's running the ball well, you're screwed. I don't know how you slow down this Bills offense, because it's about as balanced as it gets. And you mentioned it couldn't have started better for the Denver Broncos. They get the ball. They end up throwing a bomb touchdown to Troy Franklin. Here we come. We're in Buffalo. We're not afraid of you. And we got Bo Nix doing things that people said that Bo Nix couldn't do, throwing it deep. Now you got to account for that. All right, now the whole offense is wide open for the Denver Broncos for the entirety of the game, because you already hit the deep shot to really kind of strike fear into them and be like, all right, well, I guess they can hit that. We got to guard it a little bit more. All of that was going well for the Broncos. And I have praised the Bills for this multiple times throughout this season. When they get down on the scoreboard, 7, 10, whatever, they don't panic.
Don't matter.
They don't change their strategy. They don't just go, we better just give it to Josh Allen and just we better pass the ball at all times because he's our best player. We got to put the ball in his hands. We're down on the scoreboard. No, they remain completely balanced. Joe Brady has this cool, calm, collected way about how he has called plays. And in this game specifically, there was one drive where they had less than 8 plays. They had 3 drives with 10 plays or more, double-digit plays. This whole offense, especially when James Cook is running the way that he is so methodical. It is so multi-dimensional. It is so difficult to stop. When you look at all their receivers, you mentioned some of the guys that are there. Matt Collins, Khalil Shakir, Curtis Samuel, Dalton Kincaid, Dawson Knox. Like, all of these guys are in the mix. And when you look at their threat percentages of how often they're used in the offense when they're running routes, it's not like anybody's dominating. They don't have any of these guys that are above 25% and above. Some teams have guys that are 30% and above, right? CeeDee Lambs and Justin Jeffersons, like those kinds of players. They don't have anybody like that. They have a very diverse passing attack. And when you throw into the mix James Cook running the football very well, there's too many weapons to stop. They're too okay with putting the ball in a multitude of playmakers' hands that runs about 6, 7, 8 players deep. So to me, that was the big story. The stat that told the story in this game is that the Bills' balance on offense, I'm once again praising it because especially if they're able to run the football in this way, you better score more than 30 because Buffalo's scoring more than 30. And that was the case in this game. Is the Broncos came out, they threw a haymaker early, they connected, and they get outscored 31-0 whole rest of the game. So we'll get into defense in a second, but to me, that's a stat that told the story. If you got anything on that, I'd love to hear it, but if not, most impressive, most disappointing.
You know the craziest part about that? They played this well on offense, and Allen was this good, and they scored 31 unanswered. They were 1 for 5 in the red zone.
Wow, I didn't even realize that.
They could have the fifth one was a kneel down with Trubisky at the end. But
okay,
they were. But
so
even then,
one for 4.
Even with Trubisky in the game, they were moving the ball on the ground. I mean, 1 for 5. They could have scored 50 in this game if they just executed it even slightly better in the red zone too. It was. You could argue they scored 31, and there was still parts of it that were a little bit off, which is just silly. No, I mean, I think they got in Broncos territory on all but one drive on the day. I mean, the Denver, again, this is one, if you're Sean Payton, you just kind of shrug your shoulders and go, yeah, no, wasn't happening. I actually thought going into it, this game would be closer and Denver would put up a better fight than, not that they didn't fight. I mean, there was just, again, there's nothing they could have done. This Bills team in Buffalo, this is what they are. And now that they get a rematch with the Ravens, and the Ravens were the team that dominated them more than any other this season. I think you could argue it's the worst matchup of any team in the playoffs for them, but you're in that building and you have 17 and you have Joe Brady the way he's calling it.
Yep.
You certainly have a chance.
Yep. Most impressive, most disappointing. What do you got?
And most impressive, you have an offensive line that is mauling people. And I don't think there's a ton of maybe household names here. A lot of people know Deion Dawkins, but David Edwards, Connor McGovern, Osiris Torrance, Spencer Brown.
Spencer Brown playing well.
This team's been really good up front all season. And this was a 76.2 grade for that starting offensive line this year. Second best of the whole season. Third game this year with both a 70 pass blocking grade and run blocking grade. And 2.1 yards before carry, or yards before contact per design carry. Anytime you're at 2 yards and above, you're doing elite stuff. The only teams who've carried that all year are the Eagles and the Ravens because, of course, right? I mean, it's that too. It's this offensive line. And again, they may not have a Penei Sewell or a Tristan Wirfs or some superstar household name, but they've just been really good as a unit all year. They'll bring in Alec Anderson as the 6th guy, and they'll run 6 offensive linemen out there more than any other team in the league. And they bull you. They play a physical brand of football too, like you mentioned. When they get James Cook going, and we mentioned Ty Johnson also with between the way he's running the ball, and Josh Allen calls him the best third down back in the league, and that catch that he made in the back of the end zone, that was really the backbreaker, right? With Allen rolling to his right, and Johnson coming all the way from the left sideline, all the way across in the back of the end zone to make a terrific catch. I mean, the multitude of weapons, the excellent play on the offensive line, the inhuman quarterback, the whole thing, and this building, when they put it all together, this is what they can look like. Now they have to put it together against the Ravens and maybe the Chiefs and then whoever else if they're going to get the Super Bowl that's eluded them forever. But this was a game where the Broncos, I don't usually like to go with the outclassed thing, but that's kind of where we were with
I think
this.
they were just a better team. And honestly, if the Broncos were going to beat them in any category, it felt like it would have been the Broncos' interior offensive line, which has been mauling people all year. Quinn Miners has been a big reason for that, against a Bills run defense unit that has struggled this year, been one of the worst in the NFL, bottom 5 in the NFL in run defense grade from their interior defensive linemen. Well, Bills run defense grade in this game, a 76.0. Now, they got some help because the corners were really rallying to help. The safeties had some high run defense grades as well. The linebacker level was good. The edge rushers were doing a good job in containing. So it wasn't like a world beater day from Buffalo's interior defensive line, but it was good enough. And I think the team as a whole was fantastic in run defense. And so if there was any area, again, where I thought the Broncos could have taken some advantage in this game, it would have been with how they controlled the interior part of Buffalo's defensive line, and they absolutely stepped up to the challenge in the playoffs, which is good to see. And the most disappointing thing, outside of just the Broncos' run game, I felt like it was a little bit disappointing. And again, just the interior blocking that has been so dominant all season long that really struggled. Mike McGlinchey struggled. Quinn Miners' grade was lower than what it has been throughout many games this season. As one of the best offensive linemen that we had in the NFL this past year. The coverage was also a big-time struggle, man. I mean, we got people, deservingly so, voting for Patrick Surtain II as Defensive Player of the Year because of how well he has played. He was the number one defensive player in our wins above average metric that we have at PFF. And this past game, Broncos coverage as a team, 30.1. Surtain, you see it there, a 49.2 coverage grade. Riley Moss, a 45.2. PJ Locke, their safety, a 28.5. It just straight up wasn't good enough. And again, when the Bills have as much success on the ground as they do with James Cook and Josh Allen the way that they did this past game, and then you factor in all of the people that they can throw at a secondary of different shapes and sizes and speeds and styles, it's tough. You can't get a beat on this because 1 second you're covering Keon Coleman, the next second you're covering Khalil Shakir, the next second you're covering a running back out of the backfield, the Ty Johnson, the next second you're covering Dawson Knox, whatever it is. It's just really difficult to get into a groove and understand the assignment that you have, the coverage assignment that you have. And I think Buffalo's offensive diversity just really took a toll on the Broncos coverage unit, and they really struggled in this game.
And their play action concepts are just fantastic from any personnel grouping. They could have 2 tight ends or an extra offensive lineman out there. They could be spread out. They've just got so many different ways they can beat you. Plus, Allen in the design run game as well. The one thing I want to highlight for the Broncos, just their linebackers, this is a spot on their defense they need to get better. I believe they were 4th up front in our grading for defensive linemen for this season. 9th in the secondary, 27th at linebacker. And you've got Cody Barton and Justin Strnad are 2 guys who have kind of identified in a lot of games this year who have struggled. Drew Sanders has hardly played through his first 2 years in the league. I think if there's anywhere we're looking at this Broncos team needing to add on defense, it's at linebacker. They patched it together because the front end and the back end were really good, but that second level, especially when you're talking about playing a team like the Bills and trying to get on that level of competition with these elite teams, the Bills are a team that attacks linebackers as well as anybody. Or if you're playing the Ravens and Henry and Lamar are coming at you, you got to be great at that spot. Or the Chiefs know how to attack linebackers. You want to get on that level, that elite level in the AFC, they got to get better at linebacker. They got 2 layers that are really good on defense. They got to fix the third one.
Yep. The next game that we're looking at is the Green Bay Packers traveling to Philadelphia to take on the Eagles. Eagles win this game 22-10. Top 5 graded Philadelphia Eagles that we had in this game. Linebacker Nakobe Dean at the very top of the list with the 90.3. Unfortunately, it looks like he suffered a knee injury that is likely going to keep him out of the playoffs. At least that was the initial diagnosis that I saw. You just hope that it's not anything that's going to bleed into next season. Cornerback Darius Slay next on the list with an 84.4. He also was out some in this game. Tight end Dallas Goedert, an 83.2. Offensive tackle Jordan Mailata, an 81.6. And then edge rusher Nolan Smith with a 76.5. Jalen Hurts in this game, a 66.0 on Green Bay side of things. Running back Josh Jacobs, he was their shining star in this game. I mean, it felt like there were plays where he was trying to will his team to victory. He's at the top of the list with a 91.1. Linebacker Edgerrin Cooper with a 78.4. Wide receiver Jaden Reed a 76.5. Safety Javon Bullard a 75.6. Defensive tackle Colby Wooden rounding it out at number 5 with a 66.5. And then Jordan Love a 54.7 overall grade in this one. Dalton, your stat that told the story.
Nobody prevents downfield passing, downfield shots like the Eagles. This secondary, look, this was a team who, despite a lot of the offensive controversies and anything with Nick Sirianni last year, their biggest problem last year is that they couldn't cover anyone. They were 28th in coverage grade. They needed to rebuild the secondary. They had Reed Blankenship. They had Darius Slay. They had to fill in the gaps around that. They've obviously done that. They went and got C.J. Gardner-Johnson back. We have Quinyon Mitchell and Cooper DeJean playing great. 89.4 coverage grade against 10-plus yard targets in this game, which is just silly when you consider, like, on the scale, if you're somewhere in the 60s, you had a really good game against downfield targets. 89.4 shutdown, just shutdown stuff as expected. They're the number one team in the NFL this season at preventing production on 10-plus yard targets. The lowest explosive pass rate allowed in the NFL this year at just 10.2%. Jordan Love in this game, 10-plus yards in the air. 3 for 10, 58 yards, 4 turnover-worthy plays. This is where we're at with the Eagles. Defense. I think this is the best defense in football right now.
Yeah.
This secondary, what Quinyon Mitchell, Cooper DeJean, and C.J. Gardner-Johnson coming back have added to this secondary has changed the entire operation. On top of Vic Fangio just calling great games. I mean, this group is so fluent now in all of the zone concepts that Vic Fangio wants to run. If you're going to beat the Eagles, and I think the games where they've at least, teams have competed more so or even beaten them, you need to emphasize checking down and taking your yards after the catch. I think, remember back when the Bucs beat them earlier in the season? And,
yes.
And I think that's the last time. Is that the last time they lost?
Have they not lost since then?
I think maybe there was one other loss in between. It feels like they haven't lost since then. I think there was a loss to the Commanders too. But actually the same point holds.
Yes.
In those two games, those two teams emphasized underneath throws and picking up yards after the catch. You are not going to just take vertical shots on Philly. And the problem for the Packers is, what I've seen lately, and you're about to dig in more on this, Jordan Love, and even some of the play calling from Matt LaFleur, they are trying to force these shots downfield with their route concepts, with Love's tendency sometimes to force downfield shots anyway. That's what we saw the first half of last year before he had the breakout. I thought the biggest part of his breakout was the average depth of target coming down a bit, and we're setting up those shots when we have the opportunity and the windows are actually there, instead of just trying to gunsling the ball into deeper areas of the field just because we want to. So I think that combination and the way the Eagles and their zone defenses prevent those big balls down the field, I think there was times when Love passed up check down opportunities that could have helped him. There were times when it just takes too long. Everything in the Packers offense takes too long right now, and you can't have that and wait for downfield routes, especially with as many injuries as they were racking up in this game. You mentioned Josh Jacobs was their best player.
Yeah.
There's a reason for that, because the Eagles were sitting back going, okay, go ahead, work your way down the field 12, 13, 14 plays at a time.
Right.
They really only did it once. Jordan Love needs to start to understand those shots, just like Josh Allen's done it masterfully for the Bills. He needs to understand those deep shots get set up with sequences and play calling.
Yeah.
They're not just there because you want them to be there.
Because you can throw it.
And
there were a couple of throws where, it looked like he was just, the turnover-worthy play at the end of the game where he's throwing it sort of into triple coverage in the end zone. You get that. But, the Darius Slay throw was covered very well, and he ends up picking it off. The shot over the middle that Zach Bond picks off, you're kind of not seeing that player. But, there were multiple times throughout this game and this season, just to combine sort of what you're talking about with Jordan Love this season on true dropbacks. So we're talking about you're taking out play action, you're taking out RPOs, and you're taking out screens. So true, you are a drop back passer. Jordan Love this season, 13 turnover-worthy plays, 13 big-time throws, 15 touchdowns, 13 interceptions, 70.9 passing grade, 70.6 adjusted completion percentage. His raw completion percentage was, I think, 59.6, something like that, but adjusted completion percentage is better because it takes drops out of the equation. It's not punishing the quarterback for that. So, Love was still good. Love did some good things, but he also was not nearly as consistent enough as you needed him to be a playoff caliber, go into Philadelphia and win type of a quarterback. Last year, same stipulations. True dropbacks from week 10 on, which, remember, we talked about from week 9 or 10 on last season. We talked about Jordan Love as it was a top 5 passer in the NFL. He was incredible. In that situation, 85.9 passing grade, 21 big-time throws, and just 9 turnover-worthy plays, 17 touchdowns and 5 interceptions. So he was a much better quarterback in this exact same situation last year. And I think it just shows that Jordan Love is still a little bit of a hot and cold quarterback. You mentioned it took Josh Allen and Patrick Mahomes, I'll throw him in there as well. When these two guys started to see the defensive revolution of a lot more too high stuff and a lot more of the defensive coordinators going, all right, throw it underneath. You got all the arm talent in the world. We don't trust you to be that patient for an entire game. Throw it underneath and beat us. Those two guys have figured it out. Those two guys will do it every single game. Lamar, I think, is in there as well, but Lamar, brings a little bit of that extra element of it with his legs too. I guess Josh Allen does as well. So I'll throw Lamar into that category. Burrow's sort of the same way. Burrow, he's played a lot of like, hey, all right, go ahead, be patient. Jordan Love, this whole season, for whatever reason, didn't want to be that patient. And I think that I agree with you. That's what he needs to work on going into next season. My most impressive in this game is Josh Jacobs. 18 carries, 81 rushing yards. In the receiving game, 3 targets, 3 catches, 40 receiving yards there. 10 missed tackles forced in this game. 0.53 missed tackles forced per attempt. 88.2 rushing grade. He was excellent. Like I said, he was willing his team to win this game at times. So, had to shout out Josh Jacobs. Although in a losing effort, he had a phenomenal game. You're most impressive in this one.
Another good day to be a corner. I'm doing it second time, pair of corners. Darius Slay, Quinyon Mitchell.
You should.
Just fantastic. Combined 9 targets in their direction, 3 catches allowed for just 19 yards. Both of them had an interception. 2.8 passer rating. 2.8 into the coverage of these two, Slay and Mitchell. And Quinyon, look, he hasn't had a lot of games where he's flashed like the 90-plus grades and 3 pass breakups or whatever, the huge stats.
Right.
He's just been so smooth all season. You watch him and you just don't even remember that he's a rookie. Like the grasp that he's gotten maybe since probably week 6 or 7 on Vic Fangio's defense and his leverage and what he's supposed to do, he looks like a seasoned veteran out there. And Darius Slay, I'll tell you what, that ball, his interception was so perfectly thrown to him. I was almost like, man, that's a big-time throw from Jordan Love. That was perfectly in stride. Then I was like, oh, wait, Slay's the one that caught it. That's not how that works. I mean, it was just so smooth. And that was a huge play, too, because the Packers, still a low-scoring game. The Eagles were struggling to get it going on offense. And, Love taking a one-on-one shot. But these two guys, along with Cooper DeJean in the slot, it's just a world of difference from what they had last year. Mm-hmm. And I think Quinyon especially, he is just so, when I watch him every week this year, he's so darn consistent. He is the same guy. I really haven't seen him have like a rookie moment or a rookie game. Mm-hmm. He's just the same guy every week and understands this defense better and better every single week. And then we already know Darius Slay's been good for a long, long time, right? And it just speaks to the theme, I think, still of this is right now the best. I think it's the best defense in football. I think 1 through 5, it's the best secondary in football. And if you're going to beat this team, you either better find matchups with linebackers or somebody on the inside. You better run the football, or you better emphasize big time. I'll be honest with you, and I know the Vikings or the Rams are no easier. I think they should be darn well glad they're not playing the Bucs, because I think the Bucs and the amount that they emphasize yards after catch, that's the best way you have to get out of after this Eagles defense. That's because especially with Slay and Mitchell on the outside, you're not just going to chuck up go balls and complete them. It's not happening.
My most disappointing is just the Packers in the trenches. It just didn't feel like the Packers were really ready for this game. I think they struggled in the offensive trenches, struggled on the offensive side of the ball, but really on the defensive side of the ball, it was an area where they were performing pretty well, especially in run defense over the last month. Like, this was one of the better run defense units that we had in the league, and I thought they were really coming along. In this game against the Philadelphia Eagles, their worst run defense grade over the last month, their worst rush EPA per play allowed over the last month, the most missed tackles that they have versus the run over the last month. It's kind of like what we talked about. What was that? What was the Steelers? Was it? I can't remember which game we were going over. That was like over the last month. Like, they've been playing really well, and it's just like, all right, well, you had your worst game of the whole season.
The Chargers.
Yeah, whatever it was, and just the Packers. We went in this game and we said, oh, well, they're defending the run a little bit better, so maybe they'll worst game that they've had.
Those two teams you mentioned, though, I mean, when you're playing the Eagles and the Ravens, I kind of get it a little bit. I mean, you look at those, especially the Eagles with their offensive line. I mean, you got those front five been really the most consistent. Them and the Lions.
No,
all season,
100%.
Like, but and they do, and I think it does speak to when you look at the games the Packers have lost. It's in progress. It's better. You got McKinney. Edgerrin Cooper's going to be a star, right? Mm-hmm. Eagles, Lions, Vikings. These teams that attack the middle of the field, run and pass. That's where the Packers have to get better. The middle of their defense. And they have questions at corner, too, now. And I know Jair Alexander didn't play in this game. They have quite this. It's just that right down between the hashes of their defense. That's where they need to get better. We've seen it in the past in the passing game against the Lions.
Yeah.
We see it now in the run game against Philly. They're not physical enough. I think you said it exactly right on both sides of the ball. They're not physical enough to play with these top-tier teams.
The Eagles were just the better team.
Absolutely.
I think no matter how you slice up everything that this game was, the Eagles are better than the Packers, 100%. I think that there's some. We're about to get to our last game here in a second with Tampa and Washington, where I'd go. You play that game 10 times, it might go 5-5. You know, like Washington might win 5 of those, Tampa might win 5 of those. You play Packers Eagles 10 times, I think the Eagles win 8 times
at least.
Yeah, I think the Eagles win it because the Packers are still a good team. So like I'd give them at least 2 out of 10. But clearly, the Packers are the better football team. The Eagles are the better football team. I think they win this game. Even if you take it out of Philadelphia, I think that's the case. Philly wins 7-8 times. They're just the better football team.
Yeah.
And I think that's what this game was about.
I think, again, just like the Chargers we had earlier, I think the Packers, when you lose a playoff game, especially like this, and you lost pretty handily, the needs are obvious. One, they have to figure out what the shuffle is on the interior of this offensive line. And Jordan Morgan being hurt most of the year didn't help. 2, I'm sorry, they need a receiver. All this talk about do the Packers need a number 1 receiver, Matt LaFleur, they don't. We've got a great group of – no, you need a guy who can just – ball out one-on-one. Jamar Chase, A.J. Brown, Jefferson. You need St. Brown. You need that guy. The Packers don't have that guy, especially after – I mean, I know everybody got hurt in this game as it went on. It was just a mash unit. But the third thing, and I'm going to just throw this in there, they need an edge rusher.
Oh, yeah.
The fall-off of Rashawn Gary needs to be studied. Lucas Van Ness not getting it done. You want a stat I've never seen the game before? Their edge rushers in this game, pass rush win rate.
No way.
0. Their edge rushers combined, they pressured Jalen Hurts 3 times. 2 of them were because Hurts held the ball too long. 1 of them was unblocked on a blitz. 0% pass rush win rate.
I mean, that's also Jordan Mailata, Lane Johnson stat, but that's the best tackle duo in the NFL. There's no question about it.
I've never seen a 0.
There's no question about it. It's the best tackle duo in the NFL, especially with how they played this year. But still, it's got to be above 0%.
Usually, if it's real bad, you see it below 10. You see the single digits. I've never seen a 0.
Wow.
They didn't clean win a single rep off the edge all night, which is you mentioned Johnson and Mailata. It's tough. It's obviously tough. It's probably going to be low. It shouldn't be 0. And then the weirdest part about Jeff Hafley only blitzed Jalen Hurts 5 times the whole game. And to me, when I watch Jalen Hurts, I go, you got to blitz him. That's when he struggles, when you speed him up and you got to blitz him. And they just didn't do it. And that they need a receiver. They need interior offensive line. They need an edge presence. They've got a shopping list in the offseason for sure.
Before we get to our last game, Commanders-Bucks, if you guys haven't played Pick 6 by DraftKings yet, what are you guys waiting for? We are well into the playoffs now. Time's running out. As the official daily fantasy partner of the NFL, DraftKings does fantasy sports like no one else. You can play for better payouts on Pick 6. Super easy to get started. You select 2 or more players, choose if they will have more or less of a single stat. Could be touchdowns, rushing yards, sacks, whatever it is. Pick 6 is available in most states, California, Texas, Missouri, Georgia, so many more. And they're making it even sweeter for first-time users, too. New Pick 6 customers, if you play just $5, you get 50 in Pick 6 credits. We got some fun matchups coming up next week. Ravens-Bills is a huge one, right? When we're talking about, all right, well, the Ravens, they've dominated on the ground. If you look at Derrick Henry's numbers, whatever his rushing yard total is, and you say, all right, well, I actually think the Buffalo Bills are going to hold up better than that. So you go, all right, well, I'm going to pick less of that. Or if you go to Buffalo's side of things and you talk about how diverse their passing attack has been, or just James Cook coming off a 100-yard game. If you think he's going to have a repeat performance against the Baltimore Ravens, check out the stats, say more or less of that. But there's so many different matchups that we have, even in just the playoff games that are coming up next week. You can win more cash on Pick 6. Download the DraftKings Pick 6 app now. Use the promo code PFF. That's promo code PFF for new customers to play just $5 and get 50 in Pick 6 credits. Only on DraftKings Pick 6. The crown is yours. If you got a gambling problem, Call 1-800-GAMBLER. Help is available for problems with gambling. Call 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org in Connecticut. Must be 18 plus. Age and eligibility varies by jurisdiction. Pick 6 not available everywhere, including New York and Ontario. Void where prohibited. 1 per new customer. Bonuses awarded as non-withdrawable Pick 6 credits that expire in 30 days. Limited time offer. See terms at pick6.draftkings.com/promos. As much as it pains me,
Oof.
The Commanders and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, Washington wins this game on a last-second field goal, 23-20. This game was a blast. This game was so much fun. It was exhilarating throughout, and I absolutely hated it. It was stressful. I don't get to be a fan very often, just being in this job, we cover everything very analytically. We cover it from a more unbiased perspective. We try to tell you exactly why something is happening, but I'm from just south of Tampa. And so when the playoffs come around, I feel like I can allow myself to be a little bit more of a fan. This game was a lot of fun, but I felt stresses that I haven't felt in a long, long time, which is obviously a lot of fun of watching these games. It makes you very passionate about it and how these teams can get better, what went well, what didn't. But kudos to the Washington Commanders. Dan Quinn is somebody who I have been saying should deserve a second chance as a head coach. And I've been waiting for the last couple of years for that to be the case. I think he landed in a great spot with Washington with a great rookie quarterback, which we're going to get into in a second. So congrats to Washington on that. Their top 5 graded players here in this game: wide receiver Terry McLaurin an 88.9, wide receiver Diami Brown with an 80.2, linebacker Bobby Wagner a 76.7, safety Jeremy Chin with a 74.9, and then linebacker Frankie Luvu a 73.3. Jaden Daniels in this one a 76.7. Wasn't perfect, but hey, his first playoff game, he got the win, and he certainly had some big moments. On the other side of things for Tampa Bay, wide receiver Mike Evans caps off an incredible season, honestly, coming back from that hamstring injury and looking phenomenal down the stretch. A 91.8 at the top of this list. Defensive tackle Greg Gaines next to Vita Vea with a 90.5. Edge rusher Yaya Diaby with a 76.8. Running back Bucky Irving caps off an incredible rookie season for him with a 74.7. And then cornerback Tyke Smith, another rookie, with a 72.7. Baker Mayfield in this one, a 68.3. The fumble really hurts Baker Mayfield in this one, and ended up being a backbreaker when it came to the final score when it was all said and done. What was your stat that told the story here, Dalton?
Real quick, I find it's funny because, you were talking, I think you make a great point about, when we're in this business and we grew up with a certain team and, we're doing everything we do and we do everything in a neutral sense. And just so you know, I don't get to be a fan of a team very often because I root for the Jets. So
you just had to get that in there.
I just had to get that in there. So at least you get to do it as a matter of positive situation stress.
The two co-hosts that I have the most, in you and then Connor Rogers on the NFL Stock Exchange, I get Jets all the time, and then also my future father-in-law grew up a diehard Jets fan. So when I go home,
how do you surround yourself with so much negativity?
I don't know how we got here.
You stay so positive despite all of our influence.
But genuinely, when the Jets eventually do well at some point, because it is coming, I know you're not going to admit that it's coming, but it is coming at some point. When the Jets do well and make it back to the AFC Championship or even a Super Bowl,
we're going to be unhinged.
It's going to be insane.
Yeah.
I mean, my whole life is just going to be a megaphone of Jets just fandom, and it's just going to be wild. So I can't wait for that day. But anyways, Statham told the story here with the Commanders and the Bucs.
Anyway, former Jets head coach Todd Bowles.
Okay.
I'm not sure what the pass rush plan was on defense. Because if it's me and I'm watching this offensive line, which is one of the 4 worst in the league at picking up extra rushers, all right? Against four or less, they're serviceable. Against the blitz, they're really not. It's just been a problem. It was my biggest concern for the Commanders coming into the game is Todd Bowles blitzed them roughly 60%. He blitzed Jaden Daniels roughly 60% of his dropbacks back in week 1. I'm figuring he might do it more than that in this game. And it just felt like in the biggest moments of the game, that's when he only sent 4 and he was sitting back in coverage with a struggling secondary and giving Jaden so much time to work with, okay? And to me, there's a lot of it that was backwards. For me, on every single 3rd and or 4th down in this game, I'm blitzing. Early downs, he sends an extra rusher at least on Daniels. 12 out of 26 early down passes. Okay. Yeah. Fine, you're in between. They run the ball a lot. They run a lot of screens. I think maybe the highest rate of screens in football, or at least top 3. I get it. 3rd and 4th down, 18 dropbacks, 5 blitzes.
Yeah, there were a couple times where they were blitzing with 3, and I was like,
what
are we doing?
And
there?
honestly, I love Levante David. He's not catching Jaden Daniels. First of all, nobody's catching Jaden.
He did once.
He did once in the first quarter.
And I don't know. I'm not convinced Jaden was running full speed, but I'll hat tip to Levante no matter what.
And even within this game, Washington, their pass protection against 4 or less rushers, right around a 60. Is it great? Maybe not, but it's good enough, especially for Jaden. When they sent 5 or more, it was a 37. And Jaden, the funny part about Jaden's splits with against 4 or less, 5 or more here is that his grade against the blitz is super jacked up by the one throw he made on the first drive to Terry McLaurin. Outside of that, you could tell it was rushed, it was off his back foot, it wasn't as accurate as we're used to seeing him. Against 4 or less, against non-blitzes, the grade was tilted down by one bad throw he made on the goal line that could have been picked off. But otherwise, he was fantastic. Against the blitzes, 2.67 average time to throw for Jaden. Not as much time, rushing throws. It's not the deepest receiving core. These guys don't always get open the quickest, right? They have McLaurin, he's great. Ertz has been all right, but the rest of we need another receiver in the offseason. No question, De'Ami Brown was really good in this game. Stepped up, big time. But we don't
really helps out my draft prior. Let me tell you.
But we don't usually.
I'm happy to admit that part.
But we don't usually see that. When Bowles didn't send a blitz, time to throw was 3.23, and it's not because he was back there improvising. He just had time to survey the field.
Yeah.
And to me, in every big moment in this game, and I think it got less and less as the game went on, I'd have been blitzing Daniels. You have to, especially after Jamel Dean got hurt. We know the Bucs can't cover. We know they can't sit back and cover. Certainly not for 3.2, 3.5, 4.5 seconds. They can't. We've known this since week 5. I just thought this game plan, if the Bucs were going to win on defense, should have been a whole lot more aggressive, especially in big moments. And I think it was all of the moments when Todd Bowles laid off the gas. And I know the final pass play to Eckler out in the flat was against a blitz, but Yaya Diaby was actually a fingernail away from tipping that ball down. And that, to me, was actually a good play call. It was everything before that. The touchdown throws down on the goal line. There was a play over the middle there was a play right before that over the middle to De'Ami Brown. It was a huge play on that last drive where it sends a 3-man rush. It's not going to happen because the combination of the Bucs not having Diaby's really good, Vea and Kancey cause problems inside. They don't have a Micah Parsons or an elite pass rusher.
Right.
And we know darn well they can't cover. Todd Bowles had to go out on the sword in this game if he was going to win it. He needed, just like he did in the first game against his team, to send. I expect next week when the Lions play the Commanders, I wouldn't be shocked if Aaron Glenn blitz like 80% of Jaden's dropbacks.
Well,
because it's not so much Jaden as it is they can't protect it.
Yeah.
They are incapable of pass protecting against blitzes. I think Aaron Glenn should just send the gas every single play next week against Washington.
Look, I think that there were some things that Todd Bowles in this game did that I didn't love. Honestly, taking the field goal instead of going for it on the 27, the very first drive, where it turned from 4th and 7 to 4th and 2, and you had the opportunity to go for it on short 4th down, and you could have got a touchdown there. Look, I'm not saying that's the most egregious one. Would I have gone for it? Yes, I would have. I fully know that doesn't guarantee that you're about to get a touchdown. It means that you're at least hopefully making an easier field goal no matter what, and you just made the one that you just kicked. I understand there was a little bit of wind. Again, I would have gone for it there. He didn't. I understand that. You end up losing this game by 3 points. If you score a touchdown there, that's 4 points. I understand that the game script could have been a little bit different.
Flip side, Washington did also miss a couple of 4th down opportunities of their own, and I thought on their first drive of the game maybe they should have kicked that one.
Well, okay, but
it's a back, especially early in the game.
There's always
those
a risk.
Decisions are weird.
I'm not gonna sit here and say that it's egregious that he didn't go for that 4th down. Again, I would have gone for it. I would have taken the points off the board because I would have gone for it on 4th and 2 because I would have trusted my team to be able to pick up the 2 yards and perhaps get a touchdown, especially for how Baker Mayfield played in this game, how Baker Mayfield has played over the last 2 weeks. Again, I would have gone for it. Don't hate it. The timeout management, I think, once again, sucked. So I will criticize him there. It's hard for me to criticize how he played this game as a defensive mind. In hindsight, did it work well enough to win the football game? No, it didn't. So I do understand where you're coming from. The issue of the context with the Buccaneers is they do not have a pass rusher who can get home. They don't. if Kalijah Kancey doesn't get home, nobody does. And in fact, Kalijah did get home on that last play that meant everything. And the arm length, the short arm length, ended up showing up because he couldn't wrap Jaden Daniels up. Jaden was able to very calmly, very confidently, very poised, which has been unbelievable, pick up the first down to get them in an opportunity to kick the field goal to win the game. Antoine Winfield Jr. was back from this game from missing a couple during injury. He's been beat up all year long. They have really struggled in coverage. So they were playing Antoine Winfield Jr. away from the ball at free safety. So he really is very, very quiet all game long. But he was because they played him at free safety because they knew they had to have him back there at free safety.
Which is the right move.
Which again, totally. I think is the right move. So you could say like, oh, you gotta have him a little bit closer to guard Jaden and defend the run a little bit better. But I think that was the right move. And then the ultimate one is Jamel Dean gets hurt. Is Jamel Dean the best, most consistent corner in the NFL? No. Is he a hell of a lot more consistent than Josh Hayes, who I don't want to get on Josh Hayes too much. He's on the team to play special teams. He is the leading tackler that they have on special teams. That is why he is on the roster. And because of multiple injuries, now he is thrust into playing against Terry McLaurin and Diami Brown having a career day. It's
rough.
There's nothing you could do there.
At the end of it all, you're right.
Because they blitzed on one play in particular where they played cover 3 and they blitzed. So they were like, okay, let's just try to play off cover 3 coverage and let's try to get home. And they did. And Hayes gets beat for the first down by McLaurin.
Well, you're not going to win every single battle.
But you know what I'm saying? That's hard for me.
You're not going to win 100% of the battles. That's for sure. Like if Terry McLaurin's on a special teamer, that's going to happen here and there. But more often than not, to me, they were winning those battles when they were blitzing.
Right.
I think even if Jaden complete, because that's probably other than the first McLaurin catch when he was press man on Dean, and that's what it goes to me. On late downs, okay, on that very first drive of the game, they blitzed on 3 out of 5 plays on late downs, okay? The Terry McLaurin go ball, press man against Jamel Dean.
What a throw.
What a throw, what a catch, what an everything.
Shit,
I mean, Dean was beat by maybe 6 inches. That one throw, though, it feels like it made Todd Bowles pull back.
A little bit.
And I'm not about it. I get it. They made one fantastic play. You can't. The rest of the game, they only sent 3 late down blitzes. The rest of the game after the first drive.
I wonder if he would have been a little bit more aggressive if Dean doesn't get hurt. Maybe not though. Because
I don't think so. Because
he took his foot off the gas a little bit when Dean was still out there. So I agree with you. But I wonder if down the stretch, if Dean's still out there, do we get at least a couple more of those?
And also,
is he a little bit more aggressive?
That was the only deep ball Jaden completed all night.
I know, but that will strike fear in you. A rookie quarterback on the road hits that throw in the first quarter.
You can't let this Washington team then sit back and just pick you apart first down. Because that's what they are. They pick you apart a little at a time. They're not for as great as Jaden is, they're not aired out vertical 20-yard, 30-yard go balls all the time like that. They actually manufacture first downs better than most teams in the league. So you can't get dinked and dunked. And in the second quarter when there's a 9-minute drive, that's how you can't get beat. You have to heat him up. And if he hits those home run shots, more of them, then so be it. You weren't meant to win. But I think it was not aggressive enough in big moments.
That's fair.
In this game. And again, I would fully expect Aaron Glenn with the Lions to look at this game and go, okay, let's just turn up the heat. Just like he did on Sam Darnold.
Yeah.
And I think the same thing that worries me for the Commanders in this game was, can they pick up blitzes? They couldn't.
Yeah.
And Bowles just didn't blitz them enough. That's where I go into with the Lions next week, and I go, all right, I watch this tape, and I go, I'd still blitz the hell out of them. I just don't think Todd did it enough.
I think that this game, I said that this game ruled. It was so much fun. If you play this game 10 times, I think it maybe could very well be a 5-5 thing. And in this game in particular, the reason why Washington comes out on top, my stat that told the story, is the time of possession. Sometimes you look at time of possession and we'll say it on the show like, oh, obviously this team just kind of controlled things a little bit more, and that can have a ripple effect in a couple of different ways. But at the end of the day, Washington had the ball for 36 minutes. Tampa had it for 24. Not exactly, but around those numbers. Washington had it 36 and Tampa had it 24. Washington punted 0 times in this game. Tampa punted twice. Tampa's offense was catching fire in the second half. They had 3 possessions. 3. Baker Mayfield's look, Jaden was awesome, but I'm shouting out Baker Mayfield here. Baker Mayfield was my most impressive. Dude, he was 15 for 18. He had a $185, 2 touchdowns. He had 7 carries, 23 yards. He had that huge 18-yard run when his team really needed a spark, and he was the reason why he willed them to get that last touchdown. Like, Baker was incredible in this game. He just didn't have the ball. And it's an excellent job by the Commanders. They had 15 third down tries in this game, converted 8 of them, so converted 53%. So it's a hat off to Cliff Kingsbury and to Jaden Daniels and just how well this offense was able to play, because they were in a lot of third down situations, but they were in third and manageable. It was always 3rd and 3, 3rd and 4, and then you're terrified. The whole playbook's open. You can do whatever you want at that point. And they were able to convert a lot of that. So to me, it just simply came down to Washington in this iteration of this matchup between these two teams had the ball more, didn't punt, and that was it. If you give Tampa another possession in this game, I think they at least score a field goal. And I think we would have gone back and forth with these two teams for as long as we possibly could.
Until there was one more big mistake.
Because they were both playing at a fantastic level. But to me, that is just the stat that told the story, along with my most impressive of Baker Mayfield. Baker, look, after the game was over, he took blame for that botched snap with Graham Barton. I'm pretty sure that was a Graham Barton mistake. And Graham even said after the game, he's like...
The 3rd and inches one? Or the jet
sweep? The one where he snapped it early. Then it was...
The 3rd and inches, the second one, yeah.
Yes. So the one where he snapped it early. But then obviously you had the fumble as well, where, okay, you get a massive 4th down stand, and then you fumble the football right back to him. It's just I think maybe Mayfield was talking about the 3rd and inches one, and Graham Barton on the one that was... the early snap, he was talking about that one was my fault. So it was just those little mistakes there that the Commanders did not make that was the margin for this game. Your most impressive, and then we'll do most disappointing.
I think for a long time it's been said in Washington, boy, what would Terry McLaurin look like with a stable quarterback? Well, this is what he would look like. He looks like he would be the best player on the field in a postseason game. I mean, 7 catches, 89 yards, a touchdown. There was a 25-yard reception that got negated by an illegal man downfield penalty to run the RPO slant and all that. 88.1 receiving grade. I mean, when in doubt, it's going to be Jaden, and it's going to be Terry McLaurin, and they're going to ride that as far as it gets them. And I think, maybe the Lions have some sort of bracket plan for McLaurin or what, because he's that darn good. He's one of the elite receivers in football. And this year, another spectacular game from a great player who's had a great season. And I think he showed up, especially, you mentioned, well, first, burning Jamel Dean on that first deep ball in the first quarter. That was big time.
Yep.
And then just, the touchdown that put him back ahead at 20-17, he's their guy, right? He's the guy. I think they do need another one. They need more depth. They need more weapons, linemen, all that stuff. But no question, when the game is on the line, Jaden Daniels is going to drop back, and if he doesn't run, he's going to look for number 17 first and foremost. He was terrific. And on the other side, too, you mentioned Mike Evans. Well, how about 2 number 1 receivers just getting after it in this game?
Yep.
Just both of them so good.
Yep. My most disappointing was just the Jamel Dean injury, because I wonder if this game's a little bit different down the stretch. For Tampa, obviously, Commanders fans are happy about how it went, so I'm not trying to take anything away from you. But anytime a major difference-making player gets hurt in a playoff game, it sucks. And because you want to see both of these teams playing at their best. And Jamel Dean's injury, now he went into this game questionable with a knee injury, and he tweaks the knee and he goes out of the game. The drop-off between his talent level versus Hayes coming in was so vast, and we saw that on the Diami Brown touchdown and some other plays as well. Ends up giving up 2 first downs, a touchdown, the 3 targets that were at him, 3 catches, 31 yards total. So that's just disappointing anytime a contributing player goes out like that. So to me, that was a disappointing part of this game.
Agreed. Most disappointing for me, another corner who came into this game probably shaky with his health and tried to give it a go and struggled. If the Commanders are going to have any shot in Detroit next week, they need the real Marshawn Lattimore.
Mike got him.
We mentioned Evans versus Lattimore. We were looking forward
cow.
to and Evans won by knockout. That's for darn sure.
Good Lord.
Lattimore gave up 6.
I didn't think it would be like that.
You just wonder if he's not 100%. It's been a hamstring issues for weeks and weeks on end, and I wonder if he got out there because it's a playoff game. But 6 catches, 84 yards, a touchdown to Evans, a 25.9 coverage grade. It just didn't look right.
Yeah.
And you wonder early on next week, if he's not 100% and he doesn't look right early next week against Detroit, you just wonder if maybe they just go back to the usual rotation they had before, St. Ristil and St. Just and those other guys. But Evans won this round by knockout, which is, well, probably appropriate to say for these two. But you know how I think you were expecting a heated battle, but certainly Mike Evans got the better of this one.
I'm so excited to watch Jaden go into Detroit next week.
He won't. I will tell you this: watching enough games of Jaden in the SEC, of Jaden here this year with Washington and winning all these games, he won't be afraid in there.
No, he won't.
Certainly
And
won't.
that's why I'm excited, because the thing that has made me the most excited about Jaden this entire season is that the moments have never looked too big for him. Has he always been perfect and always executed exactly the way that he's needed to? No. But certainly for his standard as a rookie and just overall as a talent, you have so much faith in what this guy could be moving forward. So I'm not going to be picking the Commanders next week, but you better believe I'm going to be watching this one as closely as possible. He's a special player.
I've never seen him go down easy.
And I even think there were some hesitant moments that he had against Tampa that he will not have next week. That he was like, all right, first playoff game. Even Jaden, a supremely confident player, is like, what was it? It wasn't the Zach Ertz like front pylon route when they were right by the goal line, and like Levante David played it well. But if you're really looking at it, you go, he could have fired that at Zach Ertz and probably could have still scored a touchdown, and he hesitates. He's like, I don't want to.
It was a tight window.
And it was a tight window throw. But like again, he goes to Detroit next week. I don't think he's hesitating that throw.
I think the scariest part about him is whenever he makes a big play or takes off. Especially, it's like weird after he takes off for a run, he takes some of those big hits, and like that time McCollum got him on the sideline. And he just gets up with this big old grin on his face. And I'm like, he's just playing around out here, isn't he? He just knows how darn good he is. Even if, you'd like to see him not take some of those giant shots, because he took a couple of them yesterday. I mean, bleeding down his face in the middle of the game and all that. But no, I mean, just toughness and cool under pressure. Everything you could want in a quarterback, that's what he's been for them.
All right, there we go. 5 of the 6 playoff games that we had this weekend reviewed and talked about here for you guys. We will be reviewing the Rams-Vikings game tomorrow before we end up doing the PFF award show as well. That's always one of our favorite shows that we do all year long. So we'll be revealing our PFF awards for the season. So, offensive and defensive rookie of the year, offensive defensive player of the year, but so many more. Best offensive lineman, best pass blocker, best pass rusher, MVP, and then the Dwight Stevenson award, which we at PFF tried to say who is the best player in the NFL this year, independent of most valuable, because that gets a little tricky. So we're giving out a lot of awards tomorrow as well. Make sure you guys tune in for that. For Dalton Wasserman, I'm Trevor Sikkema saying we will see you guys tomorrow right here on the PFF NFL show. See you guys then.